Hello everyone, we have to discuss about that global politics part number 4 या 5 and green politics देख लेते हैं. Green politics or the ecologism and has had and the impact on प्राइवेट सब्सक्रिप्शन करना चाहते हैं क्या? मतलब अपनी वीडियो मतलब कोई को दिखाना नहीं चाहते हैं और आप क्या उसमें तो दिखाने हैं तो पैसा ले दिखा आप जा सकते. ग्रीन पॉलिटिक्स और द इकोलॉजिज्म एंड हैज़ हैड एंड द इम्पैक्ट ऑन द इंटरनेशनल. 1 मिनट और बस वॉल्यूम लो डाउन. बताइए कवर कौन सा कवर तो देख लो. मैं ये कवर लाऊंगी अच्छी बात. Green politics or the ecologism has had an impact on the international and theory and since the issues such as the limits and to grow and the populations and times and bombs and come on the political agenda in the 1970. However, the interested in it and has the increase and the sustainability and since the 1919 and as a result of the growing concern and about the climate changes often the views and as the archetypals and the global issues and the central themes of the green politics is the notions of and the intrinsic and the link and between the humankind and the nature and sometimes links to the Gaia hypothesis and developed by the James and the Lovelock and green the politics and nevertheless the encompassed and the wide ranges of the theoreticals and positions with quite different and the implications and for the international and affairs and the global political and mainstreams or the reformist and green the thinkings and attempt to the develop a balance and between at the modernization and economic growth and its key theme in the notions and of the substance. हट जाओ बेटन तो मेरी मम्मी है उसकी मम्मी कुछ की मोला का बेटन तो मेरे बेटा खाऊंगा रो मत It is key themes in the notions and of the sustainable and development, which by the linking environmentals and to the economic. Exerted considerables and the influence on the development theory and the particles and in the globals. Which by linking in the environmental and to the economic goal and has the exerted and the considerables and influence on the development theory and particularly in the globals and south and the radical green and the theory nevertheless and go the further and some food the instance argues and that the balance and between the humankinds and the nature and will only the environmental and crisis in the capitalist economics and system in which is the commodified and the environment commodified natures and draw and it into the systems. हाँ ठीक है ले ली. Its key theme is the notion of the sustainable and the development and which is why the linking and the environmental and to the economic goal has the exerted and considerables and influences on the development and theory the particularly and in the globals and south and radicals and green the theories and nevertheless go further and some for the instance and argues and that the balance and between the humankinds and the natures and will only be the restored and by the radical social changes and for the eco and the socialist and the sources of the environmental crisis is the capitalist and the economic system and which the commodified nature and the draw and it into the system of the market exchange in the eco anarchist and the advance and environmental and the critiques and of the hierarchies and authorities and the argues and that the domination and over the peoples is linked into the dominations and over the neighbor and the eco-feminist advance and the environmental critiques of the male powers and the suggestings and that the dominations over the woman lead and to the dominations and over the nature and did the ecologist and food there's the part and argues and that the only and diagrams and change the adaptations of other radically and new the philosophically and the moral perspective and based on the radical holism and rather than the conventionals and mechanistics and the atomistics and the thinking and will the brings an end to the environmental and the degradations and this in effects and the trade and nature as and the integrated and the whole and within and which every the species and has and the equals right and to the life and booms and Nez in 1989. The labor and the implications of the green politics are the discussed and more the fully in the chapter 16. Post-colonizations. The final critical perspective on the global politics and is the post-colonization theorist of the post-colonialism and have the tried and to the expose the cultures and the dimension of the colonial rule usually by the establishing the legitimacy and of the non-western and the sometimes and anti the western ideas and the cultural cultures and tradition in one of the most influences work of the post-colonial theory and Edward the said and the developed the notions of the orientations and to the highlight the extent to which the western cultures and the political harmony over the rest of the world and but over the oriented in the particulars and has been the maintained and through the elaborated and the stereotypically and the fictions and there the belittles and the dimensions and known the western peoples and the culture and example of the such and the stereotype. James Lovelock and the born in 1919 UK and the atmospheric chemist and inventors and the environmental thinkers and Lovelock and was the required and by the NASA as the part of its the teams and devisings strategies and for the identified and life on the Mars and but he has the subsequently and worked as an independent scientist and for over the 40 years and he the adapt a the holistics and approach to science and which the rejected disciplinary and the distractions and the emphasis and the instant interconnectedness. Lovelock is best and known and for the Gaia's and hypothesis and which the proposed and that the earth is the best and the understood as other complex and self the regulating and living beings and this the implies and that the prospects and for the man woman kinds and are the closely and linked and to the weathers the species and help to the substance and all to the threatened and the planetary ecosystem and Lovelock and was also the first person and to the alert and the the world to the worldwide and the presence of the CFCs in the atmospheres and his the chief and works and include the Gazas in 1979 and the ages of the Gazas in 1989 include images and such as the mysterious and east and the incredibles and Chinese and lustful and tongues and the culturals and bases and generated and by the colonialism and do not the only effect and the subjugate and the farmers colonized and people the however and they also have other continuing and impact on the western state which assumes and the mentals of the international communities and in the claiming the authority and to the short out and less the favored part of the world in this the views and humanism and interventions can be seen as and the example of the eurocentrics and the forcibles intervention on the allergies and humanization ground and for that the matters and others the form of the interference in the developing and world and such as the international aid and can therefore and be the viewed as other continues of the colonizations and by others means and the ideas and the theory of the post colonization are the discussed and in the greater depth in chapter 18 thinking globally acceleration of the globalization from the 1918 onwards, and not only the contributed and to other recognition reconfigurations of the world politics, it is also the brought and with it a the series of new the theoreticals and challenges, not the least of those and was the problems of the conceptualizing and the emerging condition of global interconnectedness, in which the politics is unnecessary is increasing instead in other wave of the interdependence, and that the operates and both within and across worldwide and regionals, national and subnational levels, and how is it's the possible, in others the words, to think globally, and what are the implications of the global thinking and theory. The challenges have emerged in particulars. The first concern the difficulties and that the global interconnectedness and poses to the empiricals and understanding how can we make sense of other world in which the everything and effect the everything is, and the second concern the normatives and implications of global interconnectedness and have the wider social connections between people extended and the moral universe in which we the live, and the third concern and the value of the theories or the diagrams, and does the interconnectedness and means that the instead of the choosing between the paradigms, and we should think beyond the paradigms and challenge of interconnectedness. To what extent and can the established and theories and both the mainstreams and the criticals engage in the global thinkings and in many and ways, and this is the indicated and by the degrees and to which they are able to the address the issues of the globalization the picture, and here is the mixed and as far as the realism is the concern, it is core focus on the unit level and the analysis and taking the states and to be the primarily and actors on the world stage, and it is the strictly and at the odd with most of the claim and made about the globalization and especially the ideas of and the interlocking global economic. Thus, in so far as the realists have the address the issues of the globalization, it is to the Danny and that it is anything new or the different. Globalization is more of the same other game played and by the states or for the states. The much and the wanted and the interdependent dented and world is thus the largely a the myth from other realist perspectives and the liberals and neo-Marxism. On the other hand, and have both the been and ours, if not the eagers, to incorporated and the phenomenon of globalization into their the thinkings, and for the liberals the advance of the globalization and fitted in well to the long established and ideas and about the economic interdependence and the virtues of the free trade, and much the globalist and theorizing instead is based on liberal and the assumptions especially and about the tendency of the market and to achieve the long term equilibriums, bringing with it the both and general prosperities and the widening freedoms. Adam Smith image of the invisibles and hand of the market competition can therefore be seen to the provide and the basis for other market based and unsambly and positives and models of global interconnectedness and Marxism and new Marxism theory, and similarly found no the difficulties and in the address the issues of the globalization. Marx, after all, and may have been the first economic thinkers and to have draw the attentions and to the transnationals and not the merely an international character of the capitalism, and for the new Marxism and economic globalization was really and only other manifestations and of the emergence of the capitalism and world systems or the global capitalism. However, and this the image of the globalization was the clearly and the negative characteristics by the growing divisions and between the core areas and the peripherous ideas. Thus is the debates and emerges in the 1919 and over the benefits and the burdens of growing global interconnectedness. Thus the debates and war and the essentially and familiar phase and pro-globalizations argument draw the largely and from the pool of the liberals ideas, and while the anti and globalizations and argument and where argument were based the significantly and through by no means and exclusively and no the new Marxism or the quasi-Marxism and thinking. However, the some argues and that the challenges of the global interconnectedness and defy all the established and theories and in the affected required and the development of and entirely and knew the ways of the thinking, and this is the because the rise of the complex forms of the interconnectedness and make it the difficult and perhaps impossible to think and any the longer in the conventionals and terms of the causes and effect in and the interdependence and world the relationship between the two or the more factors process or the variables and are the characterized and by the reciprocals and the fusions or the mutuals conditioning, and thus if A, B and C are the interdependent and then any the changes in B and will be the result in other change in A and C. B will result in other change in A and the C, and any the change in A will be the result in other changes in B and the C. Now time and any the change in the C and will be the result in other change in A and B, and here the 2010 and how yours complexity and does not and stop there and the fact and that any the changes in A the changes and not the just and B and the C and but also A itself, and means and that it is the become and difficult to think in the terms of the A-ness and B-ness and of or the indeed in terms of the thinkingness and in any the senses and as the such and complex and interconnectedness arguably challenges the very basis of the reasonings and in the western and the traditions, and which the dated and wake to the Aristotle's and others, and that everything and must the either and be or not be the while, and this the dualistics and or the either approach to thinking the implies and that the world and can be the understand in terms of the linear and causal relationship complex the interconnectedness perhaps call for and the the alternatives and holistics known and the dualistics and their force and known the linear approach to understanding Eastern thinking in the generals and the Buddhism in the particulars, and by the virtues of its the strength on the oneness and the grounded, and in the brief and that all the concept and the objected are the empty of the avans and wings. Clarke in 1997 are often seen as the archetypals and the example of other known and the dualistic and the thinking and other the attempt and to think the beyond and either's or the distinctions and include the Fuzi and thinking and Cosco 1994 and deep the ecology and the Capras and 1996 and the system thinking and Capras 2003 and but bears does not the linearities and or the known and the dualistic thinking and lead us, and one of its the key implications and is that and as the patterns of the causal relationship and becomes increasingly and the difficult to the identified and event take on either randoms and the seemingly and arbitrary and the characters, and this is the highlighted and by the choice theory in which the description system and whose the behavior is the difficult to the predict and the because they consist of the so many and the variables and or the unknown factors and choose the tendencies and may for the instance and be the evidented in the inherited and the instabilities and of the global financial market. Soros 2000 and in other general tendency and towards the risk and the uncertainty in the society, and it the large back 1992 and cosmopolitarianism global interconnectedness and does not the merely and challenges us in the terms of the how we and understand and the world, and but also the perhaps in terms of our the moral relationships. The advance of the globalization have the untouchability and undoubtedly and had and the ethical dimension in that it has the renewed and interested in the forms of the cosmopolitarianism and often the expression through the growings and interested in ideas and such as the global justice or the world ethics ethics and donors in 1998 and Kenya 2005. As the world has the shrunken in the sense of the pupils having a greater awareness of the others pupils living in other countries and often at a the great distance and from themselves, and it has the becomes and more the difficult and to the confined, and there the moral and the obligations and simply and to the single political theory, and the more they now and the more and they care and for the cosmopolitan theories, and this the implies and that the world has come to the constitute other single moral community, and people thus have the obligations and potentialities and towards all others pupils and in the world, and the regardless and of the nationalities and religious ethnicity and so forth, and such the thinkings is the usually and based on the doctrine of the human rights pose and 2008 and broke this the rights and based the cosmopolitanism and into the three elements, and it is the belief in the individuals in that the human beings in or the parents are the